Welcome, everybody, to episode 36 of the Southern Conservative Podcast. My name is Ty. Boy, do we have a lot to cover today. Before we get into today's podcast, please check out my Facebook page at facebook.com/southernconservative. That's facebook.com/southernconservative. There you will find links to conservative news articles and links to the daily podcasts. Be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you'll be notified each time I post a new podcast. Podcasts are posted daily, Monday through Thursday. And just a reminder, there will not be a podcast on Tuesday next week, March 27th. Well, do you want some good news, folks? This is the only good news I have for you today. President Trump announced H.R. McMaster is out on April 9th, and John Bolton is in as Trump's new national security advisor. You might remember John Bolton was a possible contender for Secretary of State back at the beginning of the administration, and we got Rex Tillerson instead. Now he's out, and Mike Pompeo is the new nominee for that position. The nice thing about the National Security Advisor is that unlike the Secretary of State and the CIA Director positions, the National Security Advisor does not need Senate approval. Now, the Democrats are absolutely melting down over Trump's most recent pick, saying he's a warmonger, how he backed President Bush's decision to go to Iraq, and that's something Trump actively said many times on the campaign trail, that going to Iraq was a mistake. John Bolton previously supported preemptive strikes on North Korea and Iran. Now, folks, let me say this about preemptive strikes. If we find out that Iran or North Korea has a missile with a nuclear weapon attached and it's aimed right for the United States and it's getting ready to launch, I have no problem taking out that missile before it's launched. Preemptive strikes during a true crisis where war is absolutely imminent is something I would not be opposed to if it meant saving American lives and an attack on American soil. But I highly doubt that John Bolton wants to purposefully get us into a war with North Korea and Iran. I do believe Bolton would leave that option on the table, and I agree with that position. The bottom line here is, folks, is that Trump is staffing his new advisors, whether it be Mike Pompeo at State, Gina Haspel at CIA, John Bolton as the head of the NSC, and of course you have Mattis over at the Pentagon. Trump now has an army of hardliners who's willing to flex America's muscles and allow this country to exercise peace through strength. We need to show the world we mean business and we're not backing down. America is going to take a tough stance against North Korea and against Iran. If you look at North Korea, we've brought the leader Kim Jong-un to negotiations with Donald Trump, and we'll see what comes out of that. And Iran is following the same path as North Korea. Trump wants to get the United States out of the Iran nuclear deal altogether. That was absolutely a lousy deal that did nothing but ensure the Iranians would have nuclear weapons, thanks to the huge infusion of cash they received. Well, folks, that's all the good news I have for you today. Let's get into the bad news. I was not home for most of the day. I was in West Virginia at the Green Bank Radio Observatory. If you ever get a chance to check out that place, definitely do it. It's amazing to see the technology America has and the capabilities to reach very deep into the universe and study what's out there. So I missed Donald Trump's announcement today in which he said he was going to sign the Omnibus spending bill, despite the problems the bill has with not addressing DACA and not fully funding the border wall. He said he won't sign another bill like this ever again, but he went ahead and signed it anyway, and he signed it today. And we'll get into that in just a bit. First, I want to address this bill and the process of how we got here. Here's how spending bills normally work. The House must get the ball rolling. The Senate cannot start an appropriations bill. It has to start from the House per the Constitution. There are a total of 12 different appropriations bills that each fund a sector of the government. And the House passed all 12 appropriations bills. Then they went over to the Senate, where the Majority Leader Mitch McConnell did not bother taking up any of those bills, knowing that they would not make it through the Senate thanks to that stupid filibuster rule. With a filibuster, it takes 60 votes to force an end to debate. That's called cloture. Then once you invoke cloture, you vote on final passage of a bill, and that just takes a simple majority. This filibuster rule is fairly new. It's just a Senate rule, it's not in the Constitution. But it's what's stalling most bills in Congress because you can't get 60 votes to bring a bill to a final vote. So the appropriations process has been dead for the last several years. So the government has been funded by these continuing resolutions, and you get these omnibus bills, which are nothing more than a laundry list of projects that are going to be funded. These bills are usually full of pork and wasteful spending. So this latest omnibus bill, which funds the government through September 30th, is $1.3 trillion. $1.3 trillion will be spent in just the next 6 months. That's absolutely unbelievable. And who hammered out this thing? The leadership in the House, Nancy Pelosi and Paul Ryan, and the leadership in the Senate, Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell. So let's go through what the Republicans got and what the Democrats got. The Republicans got very little border wall funding. I mean, it doesn't even fund the wall that's similar to those prototypes that Trump recently visited in California. The money simply goes to repair fencing. It's an absolute joke. The military gets a boost in spending. If you ask John Bolton, he says it's not enough and we need to spend even more on our military. But no border wall. There is funding to enhance NICS. That's the federal background system, basically strengthening background checks when someone buys a gun. Well, what did the Democrats get? Well, they got their domestic programs funded, including Planned Parenthood. Sanctuary cities are funded. Chuck Schumer got his stupid tunnel between New York and New Jersey. Schumer even bragged today that Democrats were getting more done by being in the minority than they ever did in the majority. Chuck and Nancy are absolutely thrilled with this bill. This bill does not address DACA, but no worries. If Democrats take control of the House next year, hell, they'll probably want to legalize all illegal immigrants, and I would not be surprised if the Senate went right along with it. So the Republicans got clocked, and the Democrats are thrilled with this legislation. If you look at the voting in the House and the Senate, it split both parties, but there were still enough votes to get this thing passed. First, here's a few takeaways on all of this. The whole process was lousy, and the whole drain the swamp mantra was to put an end to all of this. This bill came out 8 p.m. Wednesday evening, over 2,200 pages, and it passed through the Congress in a little over 24 hours. This is not how the government's money is to be spent. This is not the way the process was supposed to work in terms of how you go about spending money. There is no actual budgeting. No appropriations bills, just one giant wish list of pet projects that was written behind closed doors. This isn't what Republicans campaigned on. And that brings me to the second point. Republicans do not have a backbone and totally caved on their ideals. This omnibus bill, this looks like something that would have passed a Democratic-controlled Congress, not a Republican-controlled Congress. Republicans clearly sent a message yesterday and today that they do not stand for small government. $1.3 trillion in spending for just the next 6 months, it's absolutely ridiculous. We're $21 trillion in debt now, and this spending bill adds another $1 trillion to the deficit. On top of that, it funds everything the Democrats want and does nothing for Republicans. Zero fiscal responsibility from either party. Now, you did have some Republicans vote against this, but most Republicans supported this bill. And why? Because it had military funding. And that brings me to the third point. Donald Trump said he'll never vote for another bill like this again. Well, Mr. President, you had your chance today. He sent out a tweet earlier saying that he might veto this bill, and I was elated because I actually thought he would. Yes, this would have meant the government would have shut down. But we all know the government never really shuts down. And once it reopens, everybody gets their back pay anyway, and the show goes on. What happened here was Republicans and Democrats waiting until the very last minute. Get this thing out there up against an artificial deadline to shut down the government, everyone panics, everyone votes for the bill, and everybody catches the next flight out of town. But Trump had his chance to veto this, and he did not do it. I wanted the president to veto this thing. It's an absolutely lousy bill. But he said the idea of funding the military trumped a veto. But he said he won't ever vote for something like this ever again. But you know what message this tells Democrats? Throw a little military funding in there, and Trump will sign it, no matter what else is in it. You watch, the same damn thing will happen at the end of September. We'll get another continuing resolution because the appropriations process is so screwed up, it's so dead, thanks to the Senate, and Trump will sign it if there's some sort of military spending. No one in Washington has the backbone to stand up to this outrageous spending. It's really easy to spend other people's money, but let's start focusing on the debt. Let's focus on these programs that are needed to keep Americans safe, like a border wall, like defunding sanctuary cities. Defund Planned Parenthood. Why in the hell does the government help to fund a private organization? That's totally beyond me. The same thing with public radio. Private radio does a fantastic job in the marketplace, and considering how old the technology is, everybody still uses radio today. People even pay to listen to radio. If you have a satellite radio subscription like SiriusXM, you're paying for radio. That, by the way, is all I listen to about anymore. So why are we still funding public radio? Same thing with public TV. Why is the government forking over money to prop up these businesses? Conservatism was absolutely chucked out the window today. And what message do you think this sends to voters? Voters feel absolutely betrayed, and this is the first time, folks, that I feel that Trump voters, in large numbers, are very pissed off with the president right now. And they have every right to be. Trump had the opportunity to veto this, force Congress back to work, and to hammer out a much better deal. Trump talks about negotiation. This was pure capitulation. There's no other way to put it. And it's something voters won't forget. We elected Donald Trump. We elected Republicans to the House and the Senate to drain the swamp, to get rid of the same old in Washington, and to make the government finally work for the people like it should. Well, not today, folks. It didn't even come close. Because of all the negative news today, I'm just going to stop here. I have so much more I want to say, but it's late, it's Friday night, and we're going to call it a week. I wanted to discuss more about Robert Mueller and his prosecutorial history. We'll get into that on Monday. We'll also cover the Mississippi governor's Senate appointment to replace Thad Cochran, who is resigning on April 1st. And we'll talk about Christopher Steele's planned taped deposition in London that will be coming up sometime in the next few weeks, where he's supposedly going to detail how the dossier is just one made-up piece of crap. Well, that's it for this week, folks. Have a great weekend.